Well, hardly anyone's watching, so I could get away with that. Some guy playing Lord's Royals to a field, and he knows that it will attract the cows. And I put on the cover of my little video, help this cow bring my library. The cow needs to see the library. The cow needs to wander through my library. And so that's what we're doing here again. And let's see if anybody shows up. I've changed the time a bit. I'm going to go for 2 hours. So from 11 o'clock here in Tbilisi at night to 1 o'clock in the morning. And we'll see if that does anything. If not, I keep experimenting with the times. And we will see if I can get to my goal. The good news is that I have had a little bit of extra funding come in, not as much as I'd like, but anything is good. So we had, let's see, Joseph gave $50, and then Dejin gave $8.22. And he did this on purpose. And I'm debating whether I should even keep mentioning it, because he does that just to get other people to give small amounts. But I'm really glad that he did. So it brings us up to a total of, let's see, what do we got? We now only need $672 to finish off the $2,000 truck and customs fee once I get everything to the Black Sea. So, and to get it to my door with a crew of guys moving all this stuff. And then after that, we need the $2,000 plane ticket goal. And that's it, basically. There's a little bit of kind of legwork at the end, but basically that's it. So Thank you, one person who's watching. It says two, but there's always one there. Maybe the one is me. I don't know. And let's see. One thing I'm going to do tonight, besides playing music, I've got plenty of music, and I'm hoping to have reasons to play it, is that I'm going to read top 10 lists of different things. So I've got several top 10 lists or lists of things. Like I've got lists of films I've seen in the last year, some of my favorites, lists of 10 places to visit in Europe, something called Film Cultures, that's a top 10 list, dark fairy tale films, top 10 list, and horror films of the last, the top 10 horror films of the last year as well, and the greatest female singers, most important female singers of all time would be a great way of saying that, another top 10 list. And the reason I do top 10 lists is because they are, on one level, they can be looked at as pretty trivial. You just make a top 10 list. But the exercise of going through in your mind and saying, which were the best films of the year? Which are the most important female singers? Name 10 weird dark fairy tale films. These kinds of things they're not simply exercises. They help us to focus on what matters and what doesn't, because everything doesn't have the same weight. So I will be doing that pretty soon. Hello, a couple more people dropped in. That's good. And just a reminder, the links are down below for PayPal or GoFundMe. And we will be collecting a bit more money. Wouldn't it be wonderful? I need $672.22. Dejin gave me $8.22. So I need to get rid. Somebody needs to add basically 78. Is it 78 cents? Yeah, 78 cents to make it an even amount. And Chad the alcoholic did this earlier in this. It just drives me nuts, and I think Dejin knows that, so that's why he did that. But so I'll get to a top list soon. We are working our way down. I've got, like I said, we need $672 to get to the 2,000 and to make me feel that I can go ahead and buy my plane ticket, so I can start really ratcheting up the tension for me to get the other 2,000. Sometimes it helps. Meanwhile, I'm going to play you a bit more music. And I've got all sorts of stuff queued up here. I've only got 5 people watching or so. So since I don't want to get rid of my really interesting stuff yet. So let's see. Let's play this. No, let's play this. No, let's play that. Georgian music. Let's play a piece of Georgian music just as a reminder that if you give more than $50, you'll get 50 Georgian music files, $100, 100 files, all the way up to $200 and 200 files. So here you go. This is a group called Bonnie. I've played this song before, but with only 5 people watching, I doubt it's the same 5 people who saw this earlier. So enjoy it. Where are you from? Tell me. Got any questions? Let me know. PayPal and GoFundMe links below. Here's Bonnie from Georgia.
Florida.
Yeah, I love that piece. Pretty amped up too. I think, well, that of course is one of the pieces I've extracted the audio from, and there's another version of it that doesn't have the clapping at the end, and so you have the studio version. But that was a group called Bani, and yeah. So let me, since I promised I would read you some like top 10 lists. Let me start off with, since we're thinking about Georgia, and Georgia's far away, these are 10 places to visit in Europe. And these are just kind of random. I think right now I would change these a little bit, but since I've already done these, like I say, I sometimes write these lists and I think about doing videos of this material. Other times it's just an exercise, but an important one. So this is 10 places to visit. And these are not 10 places just, you know, looking around at books and saying, oh, wouldn't it be great to go here or there? These are 10 places I've visited. And so I'm giving you my own personal experience. And these aren't in any particular order. They're not in numerical order. They're not in alphabetical order. They're not in country order. This was, as I was putting this together, I just simply wrote down 10 places. So the first one is the Old Town in Lyon, France. And it's a fascinating place. Most people, of course, will go to Paris. And Paris is, of course, something you really have to see. But most people I know who are coming from countries either to the north or to the west, as in North America, to France, don't go to Lyon. When I was in Lyon, most of the visitors there were from France. And it is a town that goes back into Roman history. It has a little amphitheater. It's got cathedrals. It was the center of the silk trade and one of the ends of the Silk Road in Europe. And so it was a very important place for the silk business. And to protect the silk, which is it doesn't like water, they would, after weaving the silk together, they would transport it from building to building to sell the fabric or to people who were going to design it. They would, there are these little tunnels that go through the old town called traboules, and you can walk through these, and it's not like they're just sitting there. You kind of have to go to a door randomly, open it, and look inside to see if it goes anywhere. And they do, and they go to strange, mysterious places. So Lyon is one of my favorite places in France, and the old town in particular. Another thing that's in the old town is there are more guignol puppet shows there than anywhere else. And I'm not going to go on a puppet diatribe here, but I'll just say it's worth going there just for that. For me, that was my main reason for going. So that is number one of 10 places to visit in Europe. Number two would be to stop and rest in Hallstatt, Austria. Now I'm going to put an asterisk next to this because in the summer, this place is impossible. And in fact, as I've said before, I don't recommend summer travel much at all, because especially to places that are really popular, because we're ruining these places by too many people going at the same time. Stay at home and go somewhere nearby. I think it's a better use of our time and effort. But if you're in Hallstatt in, say, November or October or in April, or even early May, it's a great place to go to. It's a little village on the side of a lake, and it's got this weird old cemetery and a place called the Bine House, where they have the skulls of people who used to live there because they had to disinter the bodies because they didn't have enough room. It's also got a salt mine and a funicular rail going up to the top. It's a great place to go, but like I say, unfortunately, it's been discovered. And that means stay away from it during the peak summer season, we'll say from the end of May all the way through September. It's just too many people. And they're not, unfortunately, the kind of people who appreciate where they are. They're often just not just day travelers. They're coming for a couple of hours and then they leave again, which to me is really disrespectful for a place like that. I mean, it's a place to rest, but off season, it's absolutely amazing. Number 3, the architecture and the food here in Tbilisi, Georgia, particularly the old architecture of the old town and the district of Sololaki, and just random walks through some of the streets and such. And then there's plenty of interesting food here, the khinkali and the hachapuri and all sorts of other things. I highly recommend Tbilisi, Georgia. And again, don't come here. I would recommend not coming because it's just way too hot. It's not that crowded as far as tourists go. Yeah, there are people coming here, but it's certainly not like some of the big places like Prague or Paris. But I highly recommend it. If you come October, November, April, March, May, the culture is alive as well. So Tbilisi. Number 4, again, these are not in any order, would be to go see the puppets and the corpses and the architecture in Palermo in Sicily. You're getting a little laggy there. Well, such is life. It seems okay on my end and I'm watching it, so it could be your connection or it just could be life is weird. So hopefully it stays with you. Yeah, Palermo, Sicily, if someone was to say, here, Bern, I have a ticket for you. You can go to Palermo or you can go to Rome. Both places I went to on the same trip. I just snatched the ticket for Palermo and said, I'm going back there. They have the best puppet museum in Europe. They have great Sicilian marionettes, which are not little marionettes, but like 1/3 size humans, loudest marionettes anywhere without any amplification. They have architecture. There's one building, I think it's a church that's Norman Moorish. If you know anything about what I just said, you should be going, what? It's just someplace I highly recommend going to. And there is a place called the Capuchin Catacombs, which have thousands of corpses hanging on the walls, which is the spookiest place I've ever visited in my life. Number 5 for places to visit is, yes, definitely go to Paris, and there's lots of things, but don't go see the Eiffel Tower. I mean, yeah, you can go by it, but don't go up in it. And again, Paris in the summer, I mean, there is no point in being in Paris in August because all the Parisians are gone, literally. They go away on vacation. So I would recommend seeing the small, strange museums. Go there in the spring. Go there in the winter. It's not that cold. Go there in the fall. Autumn is my favorite season there. But look for the strange, small museums there. So look for the Gustave Moreau Museum, which is like walking back into the Symbolist era in France. A rather stinky experience is going to the Sewer Museum, the Paris Sewer Museum, but I recommend that too. The catacombs there with thousands of skeletons is amazing. There's so many different museums there. There's a hunting museum that's really fascinating. There are museums for different artists, Rodin, all of those kind of things I highly recommend. The big museums, no, I don't recommend them unless you are a student of art and know how to get into the museum when it's quiet, which is not going to be in the summer or on the free days, because it's just way too crowded. So, let's see. Number 6, go to Prague. Again, avoid the summer. It's just become way too busy there. I mean, you can't move. And don't go during Christmas time either, because it's too busy. But January, February, March, great times to go. Likewise, October, November, early December, great times to go. And look, Prague is puppet central. There are so many puppet shows there. However, let me know if you're going there, because you're not going to find them. You don't know what to look for. And you don't want, there is one puppet show of Don Giovanni opera that's worth seeing. There are other shows that you don't know about. If you ever want to go to Prague, let me know and I'll hook you up with the real stuff. But also, if you just wander around the old town and the new city and Malastrana and just start looking up and looking at statues. Prague has the most fascinating statues of anywhere I've ever been, and strange statues. I'm going to make a video about it sometime, but I'll just say, wait for that. It's going to be pretty amazing. I've got all the photos already. Then next, I would recommend the architecture and the Old Town Square in Krakow in Poland. The same summer rules apply. Go there in the fall or in the spring. It's a bit cold in the hardcore winter up in Poland, but it's also got a great puppet theater. It's also got really fascinating architecture, not quite as touristed as Prague, but it's getting there. But the great thing about Krakow is it did not get leveled in World War II, and it was spared, unlike Warsaw, which had to have its old town completely rebuilt, and Warsaw has so many very tall buildings now. Let's see. Number 8. If you go from France to Switzerland, take the train that goes from either side through Chamonix in France. Now, here's the thing. Chamonix is directly below Mont Blanc. You can get out there and spend the night. I don't care. Chamonix is not the attraction here. The attraction is the train ride up the side, the Swiss side. It is just incredible. It's like the train is hanging out over the side of the cliffs, and it's just. And I've gone up there about 3 times, and every time I'm just like, whoa! And you start off in the town of Martigny, and you go straight. It's just like you start climbing, and then after a while, you're just hugging the edge of the cliff, and sometimes you're looking off the edge, going, "Is there a track below me?" I recommend that, and that can't be ruined. It can be, I suppose, really crowded if there's a group of students going to ski or something, but I recommend that ride. And number 9, bookshops and libraries in Oxford, England. I'm a real bookstore aficionado. I've only been to Oxford once, but the bookstores and libraries there, I wasn't able to, because I'm not a student, get into the Bodleian Library. And if you can get in there, that's incredible. The British Museum Library is also great in London, but the bookshops in Oxford are the real deal. They're not like a chain store. It's serious, and I would highly recommend that. Actually, Prague is a great place for books as well, and I wish Tbilisi was more. I'm finding more, but it's not on that level. And finally, the last thing is Swiss hiking trails. And here's the thing: it's not just Switzerland; it's also France and Austria. You can, if you want. Now, this is something you could do during the summer or the spring or the fall. Is you could start, say, at Mont Blanc or Chamonix, or you could start in the valley in Switzerland on the other side of the border, and you could walk all the way to, say, Salzburg, Austria, and the trails there are just so well marked. and where you're going to go, you don't need to carry a lot with you because you can eat everywhere you go. Now, it's a little more expensive as far as staying places, but I highly recommend that. So that's my 10 places to visit in Europe, places I've visited, things I've done. And I've got more lists of 10. So let's see how many people we have here. Who's there? Would anyone like to? I see Nico's there, Tayo's there. Anybody else? Good to see you. I've got more music coming up here. We want to show the Georgian cow, my library, which is what I said on the front. Okay, here, this is a really funny one. This is from the late 1920s. It's a performer called Baby Rosemary, who is a singer. And this is from one of the I think this was late 1926, one of the very first musical videos, not videos, but films ever made. Now, what's interesting is this woman went on to become an actress and only died a few years ago. So this is Baby Rosemary. This, I'm not going to say anymore. Just watch. You'll get it. Evidently, at that young age, I think she was about 4 or 5 years old, she had already heard people like Ma Rainey and Bessie Smith, these black blues singers, singing. And I don't know who in her family, evidently she would sing in this kind of like bar her parents had. It just, Baby Rosemary, that's all I'm going to say about that. So, no, her name was Rosemary. And she was in the Dick Van Dyke Show as a comedian. One of these long entertainment stories, really fascinating. Anyway, we are indeed still raising money. I need to get there in a couple of days to get more money. I need to get at least the $10,000, which we're only $612 away from right now. And thanks to Joseph Alford and Day Jin, who gave a ridiculous sum of $8. So right now we need $672.68 to get there. So if someone could just please put me out of my misery, I don't care if it's just a small amount to include the 78 cents. That would be wonderful, just to get that off of my mind. I hate these kinds of challenges. It happened before, and I'm just like, I'm so over it. But nevertheless, it's just hanging out, waiting for us. How are you doing? Does anyone have any questions before I go on to read another top 10 list of stuff? Let me know what you're feeling. Yeah, so glad to have you. Anybody want to come on and talk? I can send you a link. You have a question. Go ahead, Nico. So let's see. Well, I'm waiting for that question from Nico. I got plenty of music here. I picked way too much, but yesterday I didn't have enough. So could you go over that thing you said about puppets being the antidote to the current modern dilemma? It's not the antidote, it's an antidote. And that is to say, because puppets, for instance, you can watch some kind of puppet thing online. And trust me, it's not the same. You have to be in the room and watching these little things. And it doesn't even matter if you see the puppeteer or not. Eventually, you will cease seeing the puppeteer. And the importance of it is that they are solid, that they are physical, that they are tangible. I could say the same thing about dance, to go to a dance recital or concert. I do that here with my friends who do ballet. There's an importance to the physical. And what we're being tempted to do is to leave it or dematerialize ourselves. Or essentially, we believe the current, I don't want to say they're lies because it makes it sound like someone's actually trying to get us to do this thing. It's more of a mass delusion that we think we need to live here, but this whole thing, right now I'm alone and you're out there, and essentially I'm talking to myself. It is nice to see little words coming up here, but that's it. Did that help you, Nico? This isn't real life. Like yesterday when I went to hear my friend talk at this, it was like a club, really dark inside, but it just, I had to go find it. I was out in the real world looking for this place. And that's important. And it's important because that will be a memory. This won't be a memory, although it'll be saved somewhere, and maybe someone will look at this and go like, what was Bern doing? But it doesn't because I'm doing the same thing. What's memorable is yesterday when I was talking with Laura, or before when I was talking with Tayo, or when I was talking with James White about puppets, or when I was talking with Justin Wells. Those are memorable to me because I'm connecting with a human being. But talking to myself and reading a few scrolls, not as memorable. There's apart from someone sitting there saying something like, Bern, I have $10,000 for you to put you out of your misery. Very little it's going to be said on a scroll is going to be something any of us remember. When you shut this down and walk away, it just disappears, as it should. So, yeah, we're only basically $2,672.22 away from basically finishing this thing for the most part. There's a little extra at the end we have to do, but basically finishing it. So thanks for the question, Nico. Let me play another piece of music here. Okay, this is interesting. Since you're in Argentina, I'm going to play you an Argentinian group called Fandango, I guess you would call it. and Fandango was a dance. But what's interesting is this group, I did a series of essays about American Gothic music, which is not the same as goth at all, but it's kind of a darker vision of America. And these guys got in touch with me and said, thank you so much for your series on this. This is on my The Anadromous Life essay site, which I haven't been writing much in lately, but there's plenty of essays over there. But they said, we always wondered what we were doing. And so what they're doing is they are using these old-fashioned sounds, music sometimes that goes back more than 100 years, and they're reincorporating them. But more importantly, they're actually using this music. See, one of the things we don't have anymore is when people die now, what do people do? In America, people do things as really sad and silly as have someone play a CD or a cassette or I guess an MP3 file now of someone's favorite music, which to me just seems, I just can't do it. You know, not in that kind of a way. I mean, I've officiated at one funeral where I had to do that, but I just felt so like, why are people doing this now? Whereas what these guys are doing is they're actually doing funeral services for their friends based on this kind of antique sort of style. Let me play it for you. This is their funeral service. And hey, if I die, oh, I'm in Georgia. I'll get some sort of decent funeral. But if I die, and if I was in America, I'd say, please get somebody like this to do it. Fandango doing their funeral service music. What's interesting about that, I know exactly what they're doing. They learned about the New Orleans jazz funeral, and they're playing Just a Closer Walk with Me, which is a standard New Orleans jazz funeral tune. And what's fascinating about that is that they still do that in New Orleans. Not for everybody. You have to be part of, there are different social societies, they're called. social affiliations. And when you do, your society will do this for you and give you a jazz funeral. And the way it works is it's the slow music on the way to the burial ground, and then it's joyful music on the way back. And these guys down in Argentina have done, there are some funeral, not full services, but definitely a real live funeral stuff that they've done online. And I think that's a fascinating way of going back into the past and trying to bring back something which, well, it does still exist, but it needs, that kind of thing needs to exist more, because our funeral services have become quite alienated affairs. Funerals and weddings are in a problematic state in, not everywhere, but many places. So that is something interesting. Again, we're still collecting money, and you still get Georgian music with if you get $50 or more, you get Georgian music. And the reminder, you can go through PayPal or you can go through GoFundMe. The links are below. GoFundMe is great if you're, particularly if you're the kind of person who likes to give to charities and get tax deductions at the end of the year. You go through there. They are an actual licensed tax deductible site, and that's why I use them. And it's the same site I used 3 years ago, the same actual thing. So you'll see more money there than certainly I've collected now. But let me play you another piece of Georgian music. This isn't Georgian music, but it's similar enough that I've included it. And this is Circassian music. And Circassian I think is more appropriate, or Cherkassian sometimes it's known, is there's a group right on the other side of the mountains play a similar kind of accordion music to the Georgians, but it's much faster. And so we'll play this for a few minutes, and then we will come back and I will hopefully have something to report on the financial front. It would be nice. But if not, I will just go ahead and read another of my top 10 lists that I've got prepared for us. So let's do that. Okay, they're playing that one over again, or they started another version, but we'll leave it there for now. And I love that sort of music. They call that horse music here, or horse riding music, when it's on the Georgian side, and I'm sure they do on the other side of the mountains too. Okay, so let me, as I said, ooh, someone's doing something here. Let's see. More money from the chambers who are double dipping. And thank you so much. Not only are they getting more Georgian music sent to them, but they've also rounded up that pesky 78 cents. So Lisa and Andrew have given $100.78. And that makes me feel like it's worthwhile to stay up late tonight. So thank you very much. Let's go ahead and put that on the board and add it up and see what we're doing. And then we will get back to one of my top 10 lists. What would you rather me do? You want to hear about films, or would you rather hear about who I think are the greatest 10 female singers, or would you like to know which countries in the world have the most interesting film cultures? The top 10 in my humble opinion. Think about that, write something down, and I will be back in a moment. Yeah, I got your PayPal, so thank you. You can also give through GoFundMe. That's up to you. Okay, so let me go up here, and okay, I'll just put down Chambers here, since this is the second time you've given, and I'm going to put a nice X for you get the stuff, plus 78 cents to get rid of that. So that makes it, let's say an extra. Okay, so that's 100. Okay, one. Okay, yeah, one. Okay, wait a minute. So that's 573. No, yeah, 571. Okay. So that means our new total of what we need, we only need $571 to get to the sweet spot of 10,000, which I'm really hoping to get to before the 31st. I still have to get the last 2,000, but that's my immediate goal, because I really need to get my tickets, and I need to get them soon. And I'm trusting that the goodwill is out there that will help me get to the 2,000. Is it a gamble? Maybe, but not much of one. So, by the way, just to remind you, one of the things I'm thinking is, when I get to Alaska, the most important thing is how soon I can get my stuff on the barge to go down and start this, what is going to be 2.5 to 3 month journey. And then there's crazy stuff happening in the Suez Canal, so they'll probably have to ship it through the Panama Canal. And it'll get here in June, which is putting it really close pressure on my residence permit, which expires in July. And hopefully nothing prevents that. So this is why I'm under this new pressure to get this done. Yeah, thank you. Chambers people, the Chambers family, the Chambers. Let me just look at something for a moment here. Okay. All right, I get that, Nico, about the Japanese video stuff. Can I talk more about L'Abri and my time there, and how you see it continuing into the future? I've never been there, but have read a lot by the Schaefers, mostly Francis and Frank, which is they're kind of butting heads a little bit. And I do recommend listening to the Rookmacher lectures that I've put on the channel, which you've probably done. I will talk more about L'Abri in a moment. I think I'll think about that for a moment and do it after the next song, if that's okay. And meanwhile, what are we doing here? No, we're not going to play any music yet. Let me just go through another of my top 10 lists really quickly. And this list is I'm just going to briefly mention these. This is something I'm thinking about for a anadrome video at some point in the not too distant future. And this is the top 10 film cultures in the world. And of course, they make films in a lot of places. Here are some of the places that are not in the top 10. Georgia, the Philippines, Nigeria, Sweden, Iran, Thailand, Denmark, Australia, Brazil, Spain, which came close, Czech Republic, Canada, South Korea kind of came close, and Poland also came close. Many people would say, well, South Korea makes so many great films, they've got to be in the top 10. And my answer to that is they've only started doing that since the 90s. One of the things that to be in the top 10 of the great film cultures of the world, you kind of have to have started pretty early or have such a huge body of work. So number 10 would be India. I think obviously India essentially produces more films than anybody else in the world. The issue with India is nobody took them seriously for a very long time because they're all musicals, which drives some people crazy. And we talk about Bollywood. But the reason they're musicals is because India has, like, for instance, many different languages there. Sometimes India has a language nobody else in the world speaks, but 90 million people will speak it in India. So because of this, that, you know, Urdu and Hindi and Bengali and all these different things, Tamil and whatnot. Therefore, in order to keep everyone happy, they started this thing with musicals. And so that's part of their thing. But they've become more respected over the years. In the 1950s, they had Satyajit Ray doing films which weren't musicals or considered great works of art. But now they even start to appear on lists of great films. Last year we had, not last year, but the year before in 2022, we had RRR, which a lot of people had a great deal of respect for being kind of a crazy, wonderful film. Mexico would be number 9. And the reason for Mexico is they do go back, way back, into the early 20th century. And we now have directors who are great directors from Mexico. They often work in the official Hollywood system, people like Guillermo del Toro and Inarritu, and I'm forgetting a couple of them. Alfonso Cuarón, I believe, is Mexican. They actually have more Mexican films than there are Spanish films. And the reason for that is Spain was under Franco for quite a while. And that kind of squashed some of the artistry in the films. And so it didn't get good. The next is the UK, the United Kingdom of Northern Ireland, Scotland, England, and Wales. And the thing about that is that I'm going to sneeze. Hold it. How am I doing? Wonderful. Okay. And the thing of you might expect England to be higher up or the UK to be higher up, but they're not, because actually they never had that many production facilities there. They now have places like Pinewood Studios. They had Hammer Studios and such, but compared to the American system, these were small and they didn't go around the world, and many of the films we consider to be English are actually American. Then we have China. China had a pre-revolutionary film world, and then when they went into the Chinese Revolution, then you got these strange, like, early communist films. But they're interesting. I've seen documentaries and some of these old films. They're kind of fascinating in a strange sort of way. But then as they started to allow more freedom to make films that weren't simply the revolutionary ideas, and then if you include into China, Hong Kong and Taiwan, and I realize it's a whole political hornet's nest, but for the sake of culturally, it's all related. They really have produced some really great films since, we'll say, the midway of the 20th century onwards. So we will just say that there. Germany. Now, Germany should be much higher on the list. If Germany hadn't been interrupted by a certain Austrian leader, Germany would be probably number 1 or 2, because that's how important Germany was to the early silent films. They're the ones who basically did so much of the technical changes. And many of the people leaving Germany during the Nazi period came to America and brought their techniques with them. So and then it took them a while after the war to really be good again. And then they started producing, particularly in the 1970s. You had directors like Wim Wenders and Werner Herzog, who started creating great films again. And since then, Germany has been very strong. The number 5 greatest culture in film is Russia. And Russia, again, the silent era is fantastic. And here's the interesting thing. Even after they made the switch into communism, the first few years of communism, they were applying artistically revolutionary techniques to their film work, so that people like Eisenstein or Vertov, or one of my favorites was Ladislav Starovich, who was actually kind of Polish-Lithuanian, ended up in Moscow, did the first puppet animation films, then ended up in France, one of these stories. But then during the Stalin period, you started getting things like musicals dedicated to tractors and such. But then after the Stalin period, you start getting great film directors again, like Tarkovsky. And eventually, as they came out, there's just been so many. They've become more commercial, particularly in the 21st century, but still, they have such a great history of film. Italy, it's hard to overstate how important Italy is. Italy made the first epic films. Italy had these films in the 19 teens that were like these weird films with, they call them diva films, where you have the woman walking around, she'd have this long flowing stuff, very spooky kind of strange films. Then in the fascist era, they kind of went down a bit in quality. But then right after the war, immediately after, as the war was ending, they started making neo-realist films. And neo-realist films ended up influencing everyone else in Europe and Japan to start making a new kind of film. And eventually this led, in America, it led to the French New Wave, and eventually led to the 70s New Hollywood in America. So Italy is really crucial, as is Japan. Japan was making incredible silent films, films in the 1930s. They did go through a period in the late 30s and through the 40s where, again, the messages were squashed by the militaristic elites. But after the war, they came out of that war much more enthused about making films because they were occupied by America. And so they looked and they said, oh, we like Mickey Mouse. And then they started making anime. And they looked and they said, oh, we like Westerns. And they started making samurai films. And Japan has so many strange genres. So, I mean, the all-time champ for the strangest films ever made, most of them are in Japan. Their horror films were very important in the early aughts of the 21st century. That just goes on and on and on. Extremely beautiful films, extremely strange films. Japan. Now, the next one's going to seem strange because it looks like I'm building up to the USA, but I'm not. USA is number 2. And there's a reason for that. And that is because so much, obviously, silent film, we were there. Early Hollywood, we were there. After World War I, we kind of took over the market. We started making very commercial films. We kept making films all the way through, always adopting the newest technological inventions and such. But the studio system broke down in the 1960s. The studio, what we have now, the film system, is breaking down again. And this time it's more ideological, but also there are issues with distribution of films. And obviously, one could go on and on and on and on and on. As if it was just quantity alone, it would probably be India. Okay, if it was just box office quantity alone, it would be America without any doubt. And you've got the great works of so many directors, whether it's Martin Scorsese or Alfred Hitchcock in his American period, or Orson Welles, or I mean, you just go on and on and on. However, I'm giving the top slot to France for many reasons. One, they didn't make the first actual moving picture, but they were the first ones to take it out of a little box and to show it on a screen. So they're the first ones to do that. Next, the more I've watched French films in the silent era and the 30s and even during the war years, there are some great classics that come out of that period. And then in the 1950s, and then the new wave in the 1960s, and it goes on. At a certain point, they start, it goes back and forth who influences who more, the Americans or the French. But they've always tried to maintain their own identity. And one of the most important things they did was they started film preservation. They started looking back at the history of film. If you went to an American in the 1960s, most Americans knew absolutely nothing about the history of film. Most of the people running the film industry were just throwing out their old films. So it's got these silver nitrate. Let's boil these old silent films and such down for the silver. That's America. Whereas the French, there was one particular man who started the Mediathèque, and so they started that, and that influenced people like Martin Scorsese to start doing the same for us. And they've had film genres even into the 21st century, like the new French extremities, which are some of the strangest horror films, but somehow they were right on target there. Are they always good? No. There's a lot of crap. There's a lot of the French comedies. No. But one of the interesting things is at the very beginning, the French start filming life. At the beginning, Edison is filming entertainment. So he's filming people doing these little novelty acts, whereas the French are filming people just kind of going through life. And they've always had more of an emphasis on drama. So we'll leave that there. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to come back and talk a little bit about L'Abri. I see that you have listened to that. Let me play something to go with this. Since I mentioned the French, let me play you a short French Baroque song or tune, a dance tune with some dancers doing Baroque style. And what's interesting is one of the reasons why France is so important as well is the French actually started notating their dance steps in the 17th century. So let's play that for a couple minutes. We'll be right back. Remember, we are trying to get money for my library to come 12 time zones all the way across the world. 12 time zones is halfway across the world. And we're trying to do that. And I hope you can give something and help do that. So links, PayPal or GoFundMe below. And here's some French Baroque music with French dancing. And we'll be back and we'll talk about L'Abri and such in a moment. Did you notice they were dancing it in a square? I love stuff like that. I've really come to love Baroque dance music, and I look at it as period. There is so much of it. I mean, I probably have, I don't know, 30, 40 hours of the stuff on various CDs and whatnot. And the reason I find that really fascinating is because it was a period in which dancing was taken seriously and was very joyful at the same time. I appreciate it more than I do the dancing, say, of the Victorian era, which follows it by a couple hundred years. And so during the Baroque era, the music is great. I mean, it's just, and I think we can learn from that to kind of get our own juices flowing again in thinking about these things, which is the same reason I'm in Georgia. And Andrew, to answer your question, I see that you have listened to the Rookmacher lectures. Good for you. And probably that video I made about why L'Abri is important in the 21st century, so I'll try not to repeat all of that stuff. But here is, why do I like Baroque dance music? Why do I like Georgia? Why am I fascinated by European puppets? Certainly, I was told about none of those things. Well, Baroque music I was told a bit about while I was in Switzerland originally in 1978 and 79 for almost a year. But it was my exposure there to, shall we say, the great works of European culture. And it was a combination of being in Europe, being in Switzerland, walking through towns that had architecture more than a couple hundred years old. It was also at L'Abri, the kinds of questions that people were asking. This was the late 70s. And I find, as I look back at the late 70s, hey, Michael, we need $571 there. So, you know, if you find a couple of dollars, throw it in. One of the things I saw while I was there is I saw that my American upbringing was thin historically. Now, I grew up in California during a time in which I learned quite a bit about the gold rush. I learned quite a bit about the origins of California, less about the origins of America, but enough to know about the Civil War and slavery and things like that. I remember there was a point at which I read the book Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, which was about the tragedy of the American Indians and such. But unlike the people today who see all of that as part of like this colonial nightmare, I didn't see it that way at all. I saw it as a struggle between good and evil, and that the evil would take over people. And there wasn't anyone it couldn't take over, including people who were well-intentioned. But when I got to Europe, it was like someone opened the historical doors. Those doors had already been opened a bit by C.S. Lewis, reading not simply the obvious Christian stuff, but reading his academic work, An Experiment in Criticism, Studies in Words. My favorite is The Discarded Image, but also The Allegory of Love, Renaissance essays, etc., etc. But when I got to Europe, I'd read most of that by the time I'd gotten there. I was completely overwhelmed in a very good way by the good aspect of Europe, that this culture that had existed, that built this world. Yeah, I saw the darkness too. You know, I knew there was white slavery in Geneva. You know, I knew that there was, human trafficking, as we probably now call it. I knew that, there were filthy rich people in Switzerland who wouldn't even look at someone beneath them. I knew that there were, I would see on the magazine stands quite literally pornographic images. These were coming out of France at the time. Even the French have calmed all that down since then. But this was the 70s, which was a time when one could say the rules were all being thrown away. But being in Switzerland, for instance, I experienced my first I lived in a small village in France for 3 months. When I got to Switzerland, they told me, we're sending you across the lake into France, Lake Geneva into France. Actually, Lac Léman, which is what the locals actually called the, somehow the people in Geneva said, that's our lake, and told everybody else that. But the locals there are like, no, it's Lac Léman. It's not Geneva's lake, it's ours. And but I lived in this small French village, and it was really my first autumn, my first true fall. Because in California, you get 2 seasons. You get dry and hot, and you get wet, and not that much wet. And I was Northern California. So, and, I didn't know anything about seasons, really. I could see snow if we drove up into the Sierra Nevadas. I remember one time as a kid going up there in a bus the first time and just seeing a little patch of snow, as we were going up, snow, look, snow. But in Europe, I got my first real snowfall. I got this taste of things. Also, we went to a Christmas at this old church that was in Switzerland when I stayed there through Christmas. And it was just like, wow, this is so great. I saw candles on a Christmas tree. I can't tell you what a huge effect upon me that was. And ever since, I've looked at these kind of lights as being like, they're not much at all. They seem better now than, say, people leaving their computers on with some weird image on it. But, the only time I plug these in is when I know people are going to see them. Like, I didn't have them plugged in before I turned this camera on. I turned it on. I turned them on for you, because that's what seeing the candles on the tree did, because you got to watch them. And we often just turn stuff on and then walk away from it. I said, no, that's not how life should be. There should be special things. And I just, I was meeting people from Europe. I actually met a couple guys from Ethiopia while I was there. Met people from Asia there too, but I'd met Asians before. But Europeans were like a different breed to me. And so that one of the things I've noted over the years is I've had lots of friends who've gone to India or Thailand or Japan, although Japan's a little different, but they've gone to Southeast Asia. They've gone to these places, gone up to Nepal, and they come back and they're like, yeah, I went into this temple, and yeah, they had this ceremony, and yeah, all of these things. And they come back and they're like a little more spiritual. That's at least how they come across. But one thing I realized about Europe was when you come back from Europe, you don't feel more spiritual. You feel like humble, like you really don't know anything. You really realize, as an American, I've been deprived of knowledge. I last night, before I turned this beast on again, I was at a place hanging out with people who were having a philosophical exchange, and I said, like, yeah, this doesn't happen as often in America. Maybe in some places it does, but I think it's a long story. But let me get back to that in a moment. I see something here that's calling my attention. Let me see what it is. Okay, Michael is giving me $4. He does this all the time, which though means, although he's going the other way, it sounds good, 571. But what he's actually done is made it. Let me change this. It's not right. 68. No, 67. Okay, so that's where we are now. Okay, Michael. Okay, $4 U.S. currency. I will miss this after doing this. There's just these little drips and drabs. Michael, how many Georgian music files have I sent you? Have I sent you 50 yet? Have I sent you? I know I've sent you 50. Have I sent you 100 yet? Because you certainly deserve it. Yeah. So now what we need is $567 to get to the trucks and customs and to my door from the coast. So yeah, okay. Okay, I get it, Michael. Thank you. So what Labrie means to me, by the way, if you're listening to this and wondering what's going on here, we're trying to collect money to bring my huge, massive 12,000 pound, 6,000 kilo library, 12 time zones and 2 oceans from Alaska to the Black Sea to Tbilisi, Georgia, where I am living. So if you want to help, I would certainly love it. There is a link for PayPal below, and there is a link for PayPal and a link for GoFundMe. Please feel free to contribute. It would be really good, and I have to try to get this as wrapped up as possible by the 31st. I would like to at least get this 567 thing down to 0, so before we get to the next 2,000, the final 2,000 for my airplane tickets, because then I can go ahead and buy the airplane tickets, because I think the other 2,000 will come. At least I pray it will. So, but what it was that I got just this sense that history was really important. I'd already been getting that sense growing up, and I knew, a certain amount. I knew about Christian history in Europe, but suddenly I was just seeing, the world wars, and I was seeing, the various epochs of European history, and not only that the ideas coming from Europe were important to, that we are essentially in America made from these ideas for the most part, and how important it was for me to learn. So that is what I tried to pass on today. But I will. Is this helpful, Andrew? I'm going to talk a little bit more about what Labrie is doing now. But let's play a song. And okay, speaking about Europe, as long as I'm in this kind of European mode, let me play another Baroque dance piece. And this is from Spain. It's called La Folia. La Folia was like, I think in the late Renaissance, early Baroque period, we'll say the 17th century, was like the #1 hit. Everyone had a version of it. Vivaldi had a version of it. Corelli had a version of it. Bach had a version of it. And here's an interesting thing. Britney Spears actually has a version of it. Go look for it. But this tune is like indestructible. And I have probably about 40 different versions of La Folia, many of them coming from the Renaissance and Baroque era. It was a Spanish and Portuguese dance. And like I said, they preserved the steps of this dance in what's called the foyer notations. And there was a guy named Foyer who wrote down these dance steps so that people today can actually dance the dance steps that people danced in the courts, but also in public. These dances were folk dances first and foremost, then got a classical treatment. But we're going to hear a version of La Folia along with someone dancing the original steps. And it's about 3 minutes long. And enjoy it. And if you need to, if you should, you should feel some sort of sense of burn. I want to help you. And if you want to help me, PayPal. Well, that was obviously from some sort of performance. There were people taking flash photos and such. Nevertheless, those were the real dance steps from the Baroque era. And one of the things that happened was when they were making those dance steps, they were recording them, and this man was notating them and showing how they worked on the ground, and also the hand gestures as well. Out of that process, along with a few other things, grew ballet. And ballet is a very unique European dance form and a cultural form. Before I go on and talk a bit more about L'Abri and try to drum up a little more support to get my precious library and puppets and journals, most importantly, here, let me just play you a very short clip of a Georgian sword dance. We saw those guys doing a kind of an imitation dance. But watch this. This is Georgia today, and these are not fully sharpened knives, but they're not rubber either. Check this out. Now, this is filmed. Okay, so yeah, and that was from a kind of a dagger dance they do here, and I've seen guys get hurt doing that because those are real blades, even if they're not fully sharpened. But when they get hurt by them, they don't go like, "Oh no, I've been stabbed" or something. One guy looked at there was a mark across his face, and he looked in the mirror and goes like, "Good, that looks good," which I thought like, okay, well that's a really different attitude than a lot of what I see in my own country, and I find it fine. So L'Abri, one of the things I did in that. In the video I did where I talked about L'Abri in the 21st century was that I wanted to show that what L'Abri was doing was a pattern that still works. And that is, now they're not a church, they're not a school, they're not simply a study center. They are a place that essentially invites people, often Americans, but also Europeans, people from Asia, Africa, South America, to come and to ask questions together. And the answers come out of a Christian framework, but as one of my friends said, all questions are possible. Not all answers are immediate and warm. Sometimes we won't understand something, and that's okay, which is very different from the way I had been seeing Christianity up until that point, where they tried to answer and fill in every hole they possibly could as an answer. But the importance of L'Abri today, yes, it continues. I haven't been there since before the pandemic. And I look forward, maybe I'll have a chance on the way back from Alaska to stop in. We'll see. But the importance is that we still need that place. And what's happened is, as we have become absorbed into our technology more and more, that kind of tangible place becomes more and more of a necessity. So, yes, Stephanie, I did meet Edith several times. She used to just call me the big Alaskan man with the beard. I knew her, well, I met her when I first got here, but she didn't remember me later. But later she didn't remember me because she was losing her memory. And she lived to be in her mid to late 90s. So, but that's life, isn't it? Yeah, and I like her book, What is a Family? by the way. So, I mean, I would quibble with some aspects of it today, but still, I think it holds up. And there's a lecture she gave, which you can find on it's called the L'Abri Ideas Library. It's a site that has a lot of their lectures and such. And if you look up Edith Schaefer and look up What is a Family, I think that's there, and that's worth listening to, certainly, in today's world. So what I think the importance of L'Abri is today is, for instance, if you go there today, it's different than when I went there. And I go into this in the importance of L'Abri in the 21st century. They make you put aside your devices. They don't throw them away or anything. They don't but they make you say that you will not use them during the day. So the day for most students is divided in half. Half the day is study and half is work. And half the students do one and the other half does the other. And that's really important. What's funny is they were just getting to the point where they realized the laptop was a problem. When all of a sudden, so they got that given to them so they could put those away and the students wouldn't spend all their time on that. And then suddenly the smartphone drops. And so now people have technically given up their laptop for a while. You get them, I don't think every evening, but every other evening or so you have access to it. But and I remember when people just had access to the computer, and so people would wait to send messages off in the evening and such. But then the smartphone came in, and that's a much more devious device. And of course, everyone says, but I really need it. You really don't. When I first went to Switzerland, to L'Abri, both on the French side and in the Swiss side, and I was there in that area for about 9 months. I called home twice. I was fine. I got letters. Now, of course, people don't send letters anymore like that, which I miss. But nevertheless, so you didn't have to be in contact with people all the time. I think one of the reasons why our conversational skills have withered is because what are the words we're using? What's strange is people don't even like emails anymore. It's like they're too big, there's too much, you're communicating. So what people will do is just write a few words here, a few words there. Really, writing a letter is like a complex thing. It really takes some thought because you're thinking of something that takes a while to go back and forth. Writing an email certainly speeded up that process and is less poetic than a letter. You don't see the person's handwriting. You don't see the paper they've chosen for you. I used to paint the envelopes. I mean, I really got into it. But then the email now to people, for instance, what's really fascinating to me is to watch how among younger people, talking on the phone, when I was young, we would just talk on the phone for hours, especially as a teenager or in my 20s, I had a friend to talk to. But now I do have friends that I still talk to, like I have a couple friends in France that I spend a while talking to whenever I call them. I don't call them all the time. So when I call them, let's have a long conversation. Let's talk about things. But among younger people, that idea of the long conversation on the phone, the longer email is gone because they have access to communication 24/7. Which means, what can you really say if you just sent a note to someone saying, I'm going into this movie now, and you get out of the movie and you write another note saying, just saw this Marvel film, it kind of sucked, but it was kind of cool. And then you never talk about the film after that. And yeah, but the nice thing about L'Abri is they force you. By coming there, you say, I will follow the rules here. And by doing that, to me, that's one of the most important things they do, apart from the teaching and the tutoring they do. Just that emphasis upon you need to really learn without the distractions. You need to take walks in the mountains here. which is they really encourage, and it's a really great thing to do. In my mind, I can walk from Waymo, the village that Labrie is in, up the side of the mountain, the 2 or 3 different ways. I can walk up what's called, we would nickname Death Hill, then across this one way, and then through the town of Chaudière up to Villars, crossing a bridge up to Villars, walk around there. I can also, there's a train trip there or a bus trip I can take. But the important thing is that this sense of being somewhere unique is fading from people. And one of the things I want to get to when I talk about travel at some point is I want to talk about why have so many small towns in the middle of America become ghost towns? And why is it young people can't stay there and keep their town alive? Why do they have to leave? Why does the big city seem interesting to them? When, in fact, having lived in big cities, they're not that interesting. I mean, I lived in Alaska. I lived in New York City for 16 years. Then I moved to Alaska for 22. And the only reason I'm in a big city now is because what I really wanted was the culture, but not the American culture. I wanted the fact that we have a 4th century fortress here is really important to me. The fact that we have old buildings here is really important to me. So, PayPal, GoFundMe, contribute. Who's out there? Anyway, hi, Stephanie. Hi, who else is out there? Anybody else want to identify themselves and say hello? Tell me where you're from. Especially if you're a new person, that would be interesting too. I keep doing this. I'm going to go on, I think, till the top of the hour, unless a bunch more people show up and have a bunch more really great questions. Let me play another piece of music while you're thinking about whatever it is you have to think about while we're doing this. Let's see. Let me play you. I have a lot of choices. Let me play you another short Georgian piece. And this is a group of girls singing a song, and I think it's a Christian song, an Orthodox song, but don't quote me on that. But this is one of the kinds of music files you might find in your bonus pack for contributing $50 or more. So this is a little bit more Georgian music. We'll be back. There's plenty more music here, but I'm certainly not going to play it all. But thanks. Here we go. Oh, nice little choral piece from some Georgian girls there. So just to remind you, we need $567 to finish off this $2,000 truck and customs thing and to get the container to my door. And then after that, it's just $2,000 more. But I really need this money as soon as possible so I can get my plane tickets because of the new imperative to get my stuff as soon as possible because it's just difficult. I want to try to get there in early March. Andrew, did I help you with the Labrie question at all there? Let me know. What else are we doing? Anyone else? If anyone else has questions, let me know. Otherwise, let's see what I will do now. I'll talk. Here is some of the, I'll list you my 10 favorite films from the last year. And these are roughly in order. I would have to rethink them. And these are my list. You certainly don't have to. Thanks, Gregory. North Carolina, good place. You don't have to agree with me at all. This is just how I see things. So Oppenheimer was the best movie I saw last year. Evil Dead Rise, John Wick Chapter 4, Killers of the Flower Moon, Megan, Talk to Me, very frightening horror film. Beau is Afraid, very psychotic horror film. Sound of Freedom, Maestro, Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour was very important last year, and a film called Nowhere about a girl stuck on a container in the middle of the ocean. How good is that? And those are the films. It wasn't the best year for movies, but it was a pretty interesting year for me. And I'm grateful after the pandemic times to be able to watch movies again in the theaters. And not all of those I saw in the theaters because of the unfortunate situation of Netflix basically being against both physical media and theatrical distribution. But yeah, so it was a pretty good year. Let's see, what else is in my library? Well, I've mentioned the books, of course, and the music. And I've mentioned in my record albums, I have over 1,000 spoken word records, which includes all of the works of Shakespeare done as plays or poems. I also have, unfortunately, only the first quarter of the King James Bible done as a reading. I wish I had the whole thing, but unfortunately, I found the set of a partial set of the King James Bible. It's really fascinating listening to it all rather than reading it. I've read the Bible before, but listening to the Old Testament, the first up through, I think it was, I didn't get as far as Chronicles, but listening to it, it just comes across very differently, and you realize it sounds very good that way. Yes, indeed, Gregory. Movies from the 30s are fascinating. Seventh Heaven is good. Barbary Coast. Yeah, no, I'm a big 30s fan. And there's a couple of divisions there. There's the early 30s, and then there's the starting about 1934, 35 is the second part of the films there. But I'm also a sucker for old Hollywood productions. What it is that there's something that happens in classic Hollywood movies which no longer happens the same way. We have our own way of doing it, but we've kind of ruined it with all the messaging, shall we say, that goes into so many films. And that is one of the things now, these film companies were, I think, except for Fox, which was run by Daryl Zanuck, and he was not Jewish. The others were all run by Jewish people, and Jewish people live for the story. And so the heads of the different studios were really interested in stories. And if you feel it, I mean, there are things that happen at the beginning of a film that just hook you and then drag you in. And sometimes it's just like, and it's in these very classic ways. After the 70s, that style had kind of been more or less emptied. because the studio system kind of died out the way it was. And then you had people like Spielberg and Lucas who came along and crafted a new version of the old storytelling tropes. But I find that new version, which is what went into what we've been experiencing since the 80s, of this, what was the blockbusters, the big story, the spectacle. At its best, you have Lord of the Rings. At its worst, you have the last year or two of the Marvel franchise, which is just all woke messaging and uh, stories with really poor characterization. But in classic Hollywood movies, you really, I mean, sometimes I just smile to myself, and I know enough about those. Thanks, Andrew. I know enough about those 30s and 40s movies to immediately recognize the characters in them, and you'll just say, "Ah, Sheldon Leonard is in this one," or there's some character actor, because a character actor then always played the same kinds of parts. You wanted Sheldon Leonard, he just came to mind because he plays this kind of prissy sort of character who's like, maybe he's the hotel clerk at a fancy hotel or something like that. But then you get a Walter Brennan who might play a kind of a rundown character. You get I mean, I could go on and on. Hold on. Sneeze time. But yeah. So let's see. I've got 10 minutes more of my scheduled. I could go longer, but you'd have to come up with some nice questions and comments or start really forking over the money. Like I said, we're only $2,567 away from the overall goal, which is pretty amazing. And I know that I'm not going to get there unless I keep being annoying and keep asking. And you all have given so much, and I'm so grateful. And I need to get my other friends to give. The people on Facebook just aren't there. They used to give more, but now they're not. Maybe I've offended them somehow. But I don't think that's it, because I think what it is that Facebook has changed as a place. And once you we all know the person that we have as a Facebook friend who just fades and fades and fades away. So anyway, I will just keep plugging away until I get that last money. But I need to get that $567 by the 31st in order to start buying my tickets, which I need because it's a 3-month trip for the container, which I didn't realize, which is cutting it really close on my residence permit here. So, which I need to have when this stuff comes through the door. But no, I'm feeling good. So let's see. That guy is me. That FB guy is me. I was on, yeah. Facebook used to be a lot more important to people, and then people started fading away. And also, I mean, I've got over 1,000 people on Facebook for sure, and I would say about half of them, or at least 500 of them, if I've got maybe, I don't know how many people. I know it's over 1,000, but a lot of them are Georgians who just like the photos I took of dancers and such, so they don't count. But then out of the others, I have friends from all sorts of different periods of my life. But it's a very abstract way of being. So in many ways, you folks are closer to me than many of my older friends because you're engaged with whatever it is I'm saying, whether it's personal or ideas or arts. And so I feel a sense of gratitude about that. Okay, well, got about 8 minutes. Any last thoughts? Like I say, unless a bunch of people show up and turns into a party. How can you have a virtual party? It's impossible. You need human beings in a room for that. Okay, well, speaking of black and white films, let me play you one more piece of filmmaking here. This is from, I think it's the 1940s, maybe it's the 1930s. This is, there was a famous tap dancer named Bill Bojangles. No connection directly to the song Mr. Bojangles, incidentally. Bill Bojangles Robinson. And this is from a movie. This is about 3 minutes long. And you just don't see stuff like this anymore. I'll come back after this and we'll say our benediction for the evening. It's my evening. It's almost 1 o'clock.
Man, it ain't nobody in the world can get me on my feet again until we hit Memphis, unless this boat sinks.
I'm tired, too.
And if I never see a bale of cotton no more in life, that'll be too soon. What's that?
Must be them traveling Mensa boys got on in New Orleans.
Boy, have you seen Smith Brown? She's the finest gal in town. Turns all Memphis upside down.
Yeah, man, yeah, man.
She's the dark-eyed Dix queen. Boy, she got it mean. Struttingest gal I ever seen.
Yeah, man, yeah, man.
Now you should see her when she get going. Reminds you of the Mississippi flowing.
Are you, dog?
Think you boys is hot enough?
Yeah, the boys hot enough.
Well, come on, boys, let's play the stuff.
Yeah, man, yeah, man.
I'm doing skip out the boy.
You can't do no skip out the boy.
Yes, I can't do about the boy.
Yeah, man, yeah, man.
You can't take no chorus, too.
Yes, I can take a chorus, too. Yeah, man, yeah, man. I can do some shuffling, too. Look out, man. What you going to do?
Look out, boys, it's coming through.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Boy, he got educated feet. Boy, I practice all the time. Here's one I sat up all night trying to do. Get this.
When the boat dock at Memphis, you should get yourself a job in one of them Beale Street cafes.
Boy, you've been reading my mind. Watch me go to Beale Street. Oh, Sam. Oh, Sam. Yes, Sam.
Okay. You talked to me, to stand on a little longer, Stephanie and Gregory, because I got some more money to put on the fire here. So, Gregory, thank you for the very generous $200 double dip. Jeepers. So let me switch cameras here. And then Stephanie came through with 123. Well, let's see what that does for us. Hold on a minute here. So, Gregory, 200 US dollars. And so that means, okay, so it's 200 there. And that's 367. And then Stephanie has 123, I think I saw there. Or was that 123? Yeah, it was. And then, so Stephanie, I'm getting crowded here. I'm going to have to rework this. So let's see. So 123. So it's 244 to get to the. Suddenly it's good night. It was good anyway. 244 to get to the $10,000 mark. Not bad. I'm feeling good. Thank you so much, Stephanie and Gregory. Both of you have been MVPs in all of this, and I really appreciate it so much. And so what am I doing here? I'm switching cameras, and this is worth even one more song. So, okay, so you got me for a little while longer. That's how to do it. Throw some money in, and if you have any questions, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think some of you folks actually know that this is important to me. And, you know, there have been nights I've stayed up at night going like, am I going to make it? You know, and the worst thing is to get to about, I don't know, $7,000, $8,000. And that's like, okay, well, that's really nice that everyone gave that to me, but it's not enough to do anything. And if I get stuck with an amount like that, what do I do then? You know, I'm not going to give it back, but then again, it's going to be tough to save that. And I can't turn around and do this again next year, you know? So, yeah. So I am so grateful, so grateful. I'm feeling that $10,000 mark just slipping past us in just a very short time. Will I come on tomorrow? I might come on at some weird time earlier in the day tomorrow, because that was kind of fruitful when I did that earlier. So try to get more of the Europeans, although the Europeans are there now because I'm ahead of them by a couple hours often. And what else? So I'm glad you like the tap dancing. Okay, let me play one more song then. Let's see what else I've got here. I've got all sorts of stuff lined up here. Well, let's stick, we're kind of in this old school dance mode here. Let's go to the 1950s. And this is Bill Haley and the Comets. But this is some weird thing on a television show or something where not only do you see Bill Haley and the Comets, but more importantly, you see them doing the Lindy Hop, which was a dance related to dances like the jitterbug and other kinds of swing dancing. And this is 2 minutes of, there's a lot of joy going on here. That's one of the things about dancing. You see, we don't have this kind of dancing anymore. Now, there's a whole spectrum of dancing, and I don't want to make this to be, you know, representative of the whole. But if you go back to that Baroque dancing, all of this is on a continuum. The continuum stops basically in the 60s, and then another thing starts at the end of the 70s with disco, and then that eventually turns into techno, and eventually you get the dark room with the thudding rhythms and bass notes and stuff, which is, to me, a much more totalitarian form of dancing and much more alienated. Whereas traditional dancing, social dancing, was about bringing people together and expressing, among other things, joy. So let's watch a little 1950s dancing.
Let's rip it up.
Well, Saturday night and I just got paid. About the money, don't try to save. My heart says go, go. Have a time on Saturday night, and baby, how I feel fine. I'm gonna rock it up. I'm gonna rip it up. I'm gonna shake it up. I'm gonna break it up. I'm gonna lock it up at the ball tonight. Well, I got me a baby and I won't be late. Picking her up in my 88. A shag going down by the social hall. When the joint starts jumping, gonna have me a ball. I'm gonna rock it up. I'm gonna rip it up. I'm gonna shake it up. I'm gonna tonight.
So there you are. Now, of course, that was from a movie of some sort. And so those were very good dancers doing those. But it was very interesting nonetheless. And I'm sure on some level that expressed what was actually happening out on the dance floor, if not quite that skillfully. Okay, so let's see. Right. What happened? Thanks, Michael. What happened to all that old music and dancing that I like so much? And sometime I have it in my mind to do. I want to do some stuff on dance. I want to do a bit on ballet, a bit on courtroom dancing from the past. I want to do something a multi-part series, at least 2 parts on social dancing. And there are places of hope. The problem is, every time we get to a point where people, I worry about like social clubs where people do this dancing, because then it becomes a nerd activity, and it's really not that. It's a life activity, you know. And so when it becomes this kind of like thing that just the nerds do, it's like we have to find a way to bring dancing back in a way that actually captures our attention and helps us to live in the world again, because dancing isn't simply an entertainment. It is a form of social cohesion, and every culture has had some form of dancing. So okay, well, if anyone's got any final questions for me before I get out of here, it's like after 1 o'clock in the morning, and I can't go straight to bed after doing this. I have to hang out and think for a while and not let myself just, you know, do this and then, you know, it just doesn't work. So, all right. Well, I am working on other videos. I'm right now putting together part 1 and 2 at the same time of my Who is Taylor Swift videos. Those will be on part 1 will be on the anadrome, part 2 will be on the anadromist, and I think you will like those quite a bit. They will be challenging, no matter what you think. So, yeah, it's got to start small, but it's got to. I had some friends in Alaska there were some girls who understood what I was talking about. And here was the problem. So then they would get together and they would have these dances, and they incorporated elements of old English country dancing and some other stuff. And then, but they were using pre-recorded music. And in the end, the pre-recorded music sunk them. Because even though they were playing some good stuff, but after a while, then some newer stuff came in, and it didn't have the same spirit anymore. And you need the musicians who will do it. And that's where you need the musicians in the room, and not the kind of musicians in the room where we're going to see somebody sing. Interestingly enough, in that Bill Haley thing, nobody was looking at Bill Haley in the comments there. They were dancing. Now, again, that was a film presentation, but that's a pretty honest idea. People did not used to go to dance to watch the musician. They went to dance and the musician played for them. And that's where in our narcissistic culture, we've got it all backwards, you know. And if you look at any of those old Jane Austen movies where they're having a country dance, nobody cares who the musicians are. They just care that they can play and that they provide the occasion for our dancing and our joy. So, okay. Oh, Baroque poets, who's the best? I don't know that much about Baroque poetry, quite frankly. I do know John Donne, but he's really more of a late Renaissance poet, and he is absolutely amazing. He's contemporary with Shakespeare, but that's like late Renaissance. I mean, as far as ideas go, Pascal and his pensées, his thoughts, is everyone should read that. He's got they're notes that were basically of a book he never completed, but it's just what he says there is just as relevant today as it was then. Look how the American bluegrass surged. Yeah, that's one of the interesting things about the Appalachians, I have to say it correctly, is that that's been this weird spot in America where a lot of stuff from the past has remained. And I've noticed that people from certain areas of Kentucky or Tennessee and North Carolina have retained something. Unfortunately, these are some of the same areas that get hit so badly by the opioid epidemics or meth and stuff like that, because there's a lot of poverty. So, but yes, I think, yeah, there's been a revival of kind of folksy bluegrass stuff in country music, which has been surprising to me and made me happy. So there are good signs out there. And it's a question of, it's like, you know, they're like little coals of a fire, and you got to kind of flame the little charcoal that's burning down. It's almost gone to get it to go up again. So support these kinds of things. Yeah. So it's up to us. I mean, these kinds of things, music and dance. If you can't do it, support it. You know, support it so that it stays alive, because it stays alive not by big corporations funding things, but by individuals saying, "Let's have a dance." You know, and there's a bit more of that spark of that glowing ember in the Appalachians. I want to say Appalachian, but I know it's Appalachian. So, have I ever found Kendall Kent's channel on YouTube? No, I haven't. And thank you for telling me about that. I will keep that in mind. I have a fairly healthy collection of gospel music compared to most people. I have a lot, but he sounds like he might be the real thing. I'm more of a generalist in the sense that I look at all sorts of things and kind of bring what they are together. But someone who is a specialist like that is the person who knows a lot more about things than I do. Whereas I know the connections between that stuff and other stuff much better, because that's what I do. I'm the person who's sitting there weaving things together, and I keep looking, oh, there's more over here. Let's put this over here. Let's fill in the larger puzzle piece. Okay. Put a fork in me. I'm done. I'm going to play one more piece, and then I will be gone by then. So, any last thoughts? Both pronouncing works. Okay, yeah. All right, so draw a beat. We will meet again. Let me play one more piece to get us out of here, and I will be gone by the time this is done. What am I going to play? Oh, this is a good one. I've played this one before near the beginning of this whole thing, but it works again. Speaking of dancing, this is dancing at a Georgian wedding. I could only hope to be at a wedding like this someday. Someday I will be, because I'm living here, and it still happens. So Georgian dancing at a wedding, circa, not exactly now, but pretty close to now.